There comes a moment when faith demands movement, not just belief. This is that moment. Fear will always try to speak loudest right before a breakthrough, using familiar voices and familiar doubts to slow you down. It reminds you of past failures, points out your weaknesses, and questions your readiness. But fear is not a signal to stop. It is evidence that you are standing at the edge of something meaningful. If you wait until fear disappears, you will wait forever. Doubt often disguises itself as logic. It sounds reasonable, cautious, and protective, but it quietly undermines obedience. It asks whether you are qualified, whether now is the right time, whether you should wait a little longer. Yet faith does not require complete understanding. It requires trust. God never asked you to have all the answers. He asked you to take the step. Boldness is not the absence of uncertainty. It is obedience in spite of it. Outside opinions can be just as dangerous as inner doubt. People who have never walked your journey will feel entitled to comment on your calling. Some will project their fears onto you, while others will try to keep you comfortable because your growth challenges their limitations. Not everyone who loves you understands where God is taking you. Their advice may be sincere, but it may not be aligned. Discernment is knowing which voices to honor and which ones to release. This is the season to trust what God has placed within you. You have prayed, waited, learned, and endured. You are not stepping forward unprepared. Bold movement now is not arrogance, it is obedience. Faith that stays still eventually turns into regret. God opens doors, but He expects you to walk through them. Delay at this stage is often rooted in fear, not wisdom. Moving forward requires courage because as it removes the safety of the familiar. It demands that you leave what you know for what God promised. Yet comfort has never been the birthplace of purpose. Growth always requires risk. When you move in faith, God meets you with provision, clarity, and strength along the way. The path may not be fully visible, but the next step always is. Bold obedience also strengthens your faith. Each step confirms that God is with you, that His word is trustworthy, and that His timing is accurate. Fear loses its power when you refuse to obey it. Doubt weakens when action replaces hesitation. What once intimidated you begins to submit to your faith. This is not the time to shrink, retreat, or second guess what God has made clear. You are being called to move with confidence, not because you trust yourself, but because you trust God. When you step forward in faith, you align with heaven's momentum, and what once felt overwhelming begins to unfold with purpose and direction. There were moments when doors closed so suddenly that you barely had time to understand what happened. Plans fell apart, expectations collapsed, and connections you trusted came to an end without explanation. At the time, it felt personal. It felt like rejection, failure, or loss. But what you could not see then was the hand of God quietly intervening. Not every closed door is a setback. Some are rescues. God closes doors not to hurt you, but to protect you from paths that would have limited, distracted, or damaged your future. Some relationships ended because they were only meant for a season. They could walk with you for a while, but they could not carry the weight of where God is taking you. If they had stayed, they would have slowed your growth or pulled you in the wrong direction. God removes what cannot grow with you. It is not punishment, it is preservation. What feels like abandonment is often divine separation, making room for alignment rather than attachment. Opportunities you lost were not always opportunities you needed. Some doors looked promising, but were too small for your calling. They would have confined you to comfort instead of pushing you toward purpose. God sees beyond immediate gain and short-term success. He sees the end from the beginning. When he blocks a path, it is because he knows where that road leads, even when you do not. Redirection is mercy disguised as disappointment. There were times when you questioned your worth because something didn't work out. You wondered if you weren't good enough, skilled enough, or faithful enough. But God was never questioning you. He was guiding you. He knows that certain environments can drain your strength, distort your vision, and delay your destiny. Closing the door was his way of saying, this is not where you belong. Protection often feels painful because it interrupts what we hoped would work. God's redirection also teaches trust. It forces you to release control and lean into his wisdom. You learn that security is not found in familiarity, but in obedience. Each closed door trains your heart to depend on God rather than outcomes. It teaches you to keep moving forward even when the map changes. That flexibility and faith are essential for the next season. Looking back, you begin to realize that if certain doors had remained open, you would have settled for less than what God intended. You would have compromised, stayed comfortable, or accepted limits that were never meant for you. God's no was actually setting you up for a greater yes. What you thought you lost was making space for what you truly need. These closed doors were not delays to your destiny. They were divine adjustments. God was narrowing your focus, strengthening your direction, and aligning you with his will. Every door he shut was steering you away from harm and closer to fulfillment, even when it didn't feel that way at the time. There were prayers you whispered when no one else was listening, moments when your faith was carried more by tears than by words. Those private battles mattered more than you realized. God pays attention to what is done in secret, to the cries that never made it to a public altar, to the faith that survived without recognition. When you knelt alone, when you held on in silence, heaven was recording every moment. Nothing offered in sincerity is ever overlooked by God. The tears you shed were not signs of weakness. They were evidence of endurance. Each tear carried a story of trust, of choosing faith over despair when circumstances gave you every reason to quit. God collects those moments because they reveal the condition of the heart. While others only see outcomes, God honors the process. What was formed in private shaped the strength you now carry in public. Private pain often becomes public purpose. There were times when obedience cost you comfort. You chose to keep believing when giving up seemed easier. You kept praying when answers felt distant. Those choices built a testimony long before anyone heard your voice. Testimony is not born on platforms. It is built in quiet places where faith is tested without applause. God uses those unseen moments to prepare you for visible impact. When the season shifts, what was hidden begins to surface. The prayers that seemed unanswered were not ignored. They were stored waiting for the right moment to manifest. God does not rush revelation because he knows when it will carry the most meaning. Public testimony is not about recognition, it is about confirmation. It confirms that God is faithful, that perseverance was not in vain, and that trust was justified. Your private struggles also refined your message. Because you have felt pain, your words now carry compassion. Because you have waited, your faith carries depth. Because you have endured, your testimony carries credibility. God allows certain battles so that when he elevates you, your story points back to him, not to your strength. What others see as success is rooted in surrender. Public moments have greater impact when they are backed by private faithfulness. God reveals what he has already established. When people hear your story, they may see victory, but God sees the nights you cried, the mornings you still showed up, and the prayers you prayed with trembling faith. Those moments created spiritual authority that cannot be manufactured. What is about to be seen did not start today. It began in hidden places where faith was tested and refined. The testimony that is emerging now is not sudden. It is the result of consistent trust when no one was watching. God is simply allowing the fruit of your private faith to be seen so others can be encouraged by what he has done. This moment is not something that appeared suddenly or without meaning. It has been written into divine timing long before you ever recognized it. What feels like now to you has always been appointed in heaven. God does not operate by accident, chance, or coincidence. Every step, every pause, every delay has been measured with intention. Even when life seemed out of control, God was still in control, quietly arranging circumstances, aligning people, and shaping your heart for this precise season. This is why things could not move forward until now, because the timing had to be right, not just around you, but within you. There were moments when you felt early, moments when you felt late, and moments when you felt completely lost. But God does not rush his purpose, and he does not release blessings before they can be sustained. What you are stepping into now required patience, endurance, and spiritual growth. Heaven was waiting for you to become strong enough to carry what you once only prayed for. The waiting was not punishment, it was preparation. God was not ignoring you, he was investing in you. Every delay refined your faith. Every unanswered prayer strengthened your trust. Every setback taught you reliance on God rather than your own ability. If things had happened when you wanted, they would have been incomplete, fragile, and easily lost. But now, this moment carries weight, depth, and stability. God waits not because he is slow, but because he is precise. He releases things at the exact moment they can flourish. This is why the pressure was intense. This is why the resistance was strong. The closer you came to divine alignment, the more the process demanded from you. God was shaping your mindset, correcting your vision, and cleansing your motives. He was ensuring that when this moment arrived, you would recognize it not as luck, but as fulfillment, not as human achievement, but as divine orchestration. Even the battles you fought that made no sense were connected to this timing. You were learning discernment. You were learning obedience. You were learning how to stand firm without applause and remain faithful without validation. Heaven was watching how you responded when no one was cheering, when doors stayed closed, and when progress felt invisible. Those responses mattered. They determined readiness. Now, what once felt distant has drawn near. What once felt impossible is now positioned for release. This moment carries authority because it was earned through obedience and endurance. God has been waiting not because he doubted you, but because he knew you could become more. This season is not rushed, forced, or premature. It is aligned. When God moves, it is never random. It is deliberate, purposeful, and perfectly timed. And this moment right here, right now, is proof that heaven's timing is exact, faithful, and unstoppable. There were long stretches where nothing seemed to happen, where prayers felt unanswered and progress felt invisible. Those seasons were not empty, they were formative. Silence does not mean God stopped working. It means he was working deeper than you could see. While you were waiting for outward change, God was strengthening the inner foundation of your life. He was building endurance, sharpening discernment, and teaching you how to trust him without constant reassurance. Growth in silence is often the most powerful kind because it reshapes who you are, not just what you receive. Delay has a purpose when it is placed in God's hands. It slows you down enough to develop patience, humility, and spiritual awareness. In those moments when you wanted answers but received none, your faith learned how to stand without crutches. You discovered how to pray without immediate reward, how to obey without guarantees, and how to remain faithful when outcomes were uncertain. That kind of faith cannot be rushed. It only forms when time and pressure work together under God's guidance. Hardship was also a teacher. Every challenge exposed areas that needed strengthening. Weaknesses that would have collapsed under future responsibility were addressed in advance. God allowed certain pressures not to break you, but to reveal what was inside you. He refined your reactions, corrected your attitudes, and taught you how to respond rather than react. The struggle forced you to grow beyond surface level belief into a deeper, more resilient trust. There were moments when you felt overlooked or forgotten, but heaven was watching closely. God was observing how you handled disappointment, how you treated others when you were hurting, and how you spoke when hope felt distant. These moments mattered more than visible success because they shaped your character. What God is preparing to release requires integrity, maturity, and emotional strength. Without these seasons, the blessing would have been short-lived. Silence also stripped away distractions. It taught you how to hear God's voice without noise, applause, or approval. You learned the difference between being busy and being aligned. You learned that purpose does not always make noise before it manifests. In the quiet, your priorities were realigned, your motives purified, and your dependence on God deepened. That clarity is essential for what lies ahead. What you endured was not wasted time. Every tear watered future growth. Every lonely moment deepened your connection with God. Every delay ensured that when this next season arrives, you will not be overwhelmed by it. You are not stepping forward as the same person who entered the waiting. You are stronger, wiser, and more grounded. God allows development before elevation because he values longevity over speed. The process has prepared you not just to receive what is coming, but to sustain it. What once felt like silence and delay was actually God making sure you would be ready when the moment finally arrived. There is a deeper purpose woven into everything you have endured, even the parts that felt unnecessary or unfair. What is coming is not just about personal relief or individual success. It is about transformation that reaches beyond you. God does not waste pain. Every struggle, every delay, every disappointment has been shaping a story that carries meaning for others. What once felt like isolated suffering is now becoming a source of strength and guidance for generations that will come after you. The pain you experienced sharpened your compassion. It taught you how to see others clearly, how to recognize silent battles, and how to respond with grace instead of judgment. Because you have been wounded, you now carry the ability to heal. Because you have struggled, you now understand perseverance. God allows certain experiences so that when He elevates you, your influence carries empathy rather than ego. That kind of impact lasts. What is being released will bring clarity to the past. You will begin to see how each challenge was connected, how each hardship redirected you, and how each delay protected you. What once felt confusing will start to make sense. The pieces will align not because the pain was good, but because God was present in it. Purpose does not remove the memory of pain, but it redeems it. Your obedience has generational weight. The faith you chose in difficult moments creates a pattern for those who watch your life. Whether they are family, friends, or people you may never meet, your response to hardship becomes a testimony. When God moves through you, others gain permission to believe, to hope, and to trust again. Your story becomes a bridge between despair and faith. This impact extends beyond your lifetime. The decisions you make now, the faith you demonstrate, and the integrity you protect will echo forward. God often chooses individuals not just to bless them, but to establish a legacy. What begins as personal breakthrough becomes communal blessing. Your endurance becomes evidence that God is faithful across generations. The pain that once threatened to break you is now becoming the foundation of your influence. God builds on what has been tested. He entrusts greater responsibility to those who have learned humility through hardship. What He is releasing now will be sustained because it was shaped in adversity. This season marks a turning point where past struggles transform into future purpose. The wounds become wisdom, the losses become lessons, the waiting becomes witness. What God is doing through you will outlive the moment, reaching further than you can see, touching lives you may never know, and proving that nothing surrendered to Him is ever wasted.